Good morning. In 1998, I was working at Bellevue Hospital in New York City in the Survivors of Political Torture program. I'm a Kuwaiti, but I'm a New York licensed clinical psychologist. Worked with one too many people who grew up idolizing their leadership only to end up being tortured by them. And as being the father of 5 boys, 2 at that time, one of the things that are going through my mind is, Islam needs to be rethought, redesigned, and rebuilt. Words that I just stole off the board, but that's what I was thinking. My son Rayyan here taught me a lesson this summer. He basically left his Scooby-Doo toy in his playhouse and came into the house and said, "Baba, I want you to come with me to my house to get my Scooby-Doo toy." And I said, "Rayyan, go away, I'm working." And then he lowered himself to my level and he said, "Baba, I want you to come with me to my office in my house. I have work to do." So he rethought how to approach me. Now, 2 years later, I left Bellevue, but 9/11 happened. Everybody talked about how 911 was the US emergency call, but the design there, 9 times 11 is 99, which is a very important number in Islam. But if you read the numbers as a word from right to left, you have the word Lillah or Allah. So whoever it was that did this, and I've heard a million theories, in the end was taking down the way I thought of Islam, and I didn't want that to be the picture for my kids. So that was the question I had to answer. I raised money, raised $7 million within a few months when I came up with the 99. $1 million came from my classmates in business school, but I think the most important contribution, one thing I'm proudest of is I think I'm the only Kuwaiti that went to Beirut and actually came out with money. So when things this terrible happen, people say it sounds like a job for Superman. Well, there was no Superman, and so I had to create them. And I went to people who actually were active working with Spider-Man and Batman and put top-tier talent together, which was very difficult, convincing these guys I wanted to create heroes based on Islam in a post-9/11 world. But it happened, and we basically launched a comic book series, and the concept was this. Basically, there are 99 heroes from 99 different countries, so American heroes and Indonesian heroes and Saudi heroes working together to make the world a better place. They're almost evenly split between boys and girls, and there's something in there for everybody. In fact, the writers have the direction that it's only when kids of all religions and non-religions can identify with these characters that I've achieved what I'm trying to do. There's no religious content. Now, the characters are from all over the world. This is our Canadian character here. You see a clip from the upcoming animation series by Endemol. There's an Indian character there, Wasa. The characters are designed by people who are involved in designing X-Men. Batana there, I based on my wife. I came home, I said, I created a character after you. She said, "That's not me." I said, "It's the eyes. Look at the eyes." So basically, the New York Times interviewed me early December '05. They sat on the article for 6 weeks because it wasn't timely. Islam and cartoon. And then thankfully, the Danes put out that cartoon controversy. Next thing you knew, New York Times put out a full-page article because it became timely. And anybody Googling Islam and cartoon or Islam and comic, guess what they got? They got me. And that led to over thousands of newspaper articles and led to a Chinese edition, which we're launching this quarter. Turkish edition, we just found out sold 20,000 copies in month 1 in October. Arabic and English editions in India, Indonesia. So we created the first ever intellectual property that's been able to go global out of the Islamic world by basing it on values that we share with the rest of humanity, as juxtaposed against people who want to believe that we come out of caves on Mars. We launched a theme park in Kuwait a year ago. The second one should be opening in another GCC country within a year. Again, the same things that other people have created lots of hateful messages from, we went back into and pulled out very positive messages. That's me with Jabbar here, our Saudi character on the roller coaster. We launched during Kuwait's Independence Day last February, and actually finally launched the Kuwaiti members of the 99, which I hadn't done for 5 years. We've done 2 merchandising deals, and you can see here part of the conflict between keeping the philosophy and doing the deals. I've turned down many deals recently, but these are 2 deals we did, one in Spain, one in Turkey for back-to-school products. So we're actually getting paid licenses to do this, which is very heartening, and been able to create what we think is a global product. One of the things that's exciting, which you'll see a clip of now, is we did a joint venture with Endemol. Endemol are the largest TV producers in the world behind Star Academy, Deal or No Deal, Big Brother. 26 episodes have been written in Hollywood by the writers behind Ben 10 and Spider-Man and Superman. We have offers from US broadcasters, UK broadcasters, French and German. And the idea was to launch it in the West because that's where it can make money. And then if we have to give it out for free in the Islamic world, to compete with the hateful messages out there. So basically, PowerPoint just crashed. Basically, so my approach to this has been creating this concept. I've raised over $23 million, and I'm closing another 15 to 20 next month. So part of my conundrum, part of the thing that and I'm still in control of the company. The next 3 years will really tell us if this is the next Spider-Man or whether it was a social experiment of 10 years. And one of my fears right now is, with this next round, for example, I had one potential person who wanted to buy the whole thing, and part of me is like, well, if he does that, to quote Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. We built something here, right? There are cultural icons, and what you haven't, the slide that you didn't see here that got crashed, is basically a slide that announced that last summer, to commemorate President Obama reaching out to the Muslim world, we did a deal with Time Warner that this year, here we go, the 99 are going to be joining forces with the Justice League, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, to have that conversation that has never been had between democratically elected or selected cultural icons. In this case, it's selected, not elected, right? So it's going to start with distrust and move to trust. So an eerie shot here, you have the World Trade Center, this is, I mean, not to feed any more conspiracy theories, but if you see this, I mean, even the shape of the buildings kind of happen in the word Allah. So the design in there is cannot be denied. I just do not want my children growing up in a world where Islam is associated with this kind of stuff. And my question to you is, how do we've broken through a lot of, when I got accused of, Bin Laden joining the 99, I went and did a deal with Time Warner and made, we're hanging out with Batman, Superman, obviously there's nothing like that's going to happen. When, we got told that this is un-Islamic, my second round of finance, I did through an Islamic investment bank. So I've been able to kind of, each problem kind of focus on finding a solution that was practical, but now it's about how do we turn this into a real global product. It's going to be on TV by year end, but how are we able to kind of bridge that gap and bring in revenues earlier and gain the trust of multinationals through licenses before I have to do another round of financing and lose control of the company? Thank you.